Hello! Welcome! I'm Dave DC Hewitt here for Fantasy Basketball Analyzer, and thank you for watching. Sorry this video is out a little later than it normally would be on Saturday, but I had to deal with some frozen pipes at my mom's house because there's no water because of the weather. And then I got a flat tire, so it was an interesting day. It's an interesting commute to the studio that's in my own house because I had to go deal with this other nonsense. But enough about that, because we're not talking about the past. We're looking forward to week 8 about what's going to happen. I don't need this hat anymore. Let's get into it like we always do by taking a look at the pace and defensive efficiency of teams. Right now, it's still our usual suspects, and that's kind of what we're going to expect for most of the season. Like, there will be some changes here and there, but we kind of now have a feel, 7 weeks of close of the season, of which teams we do and don't want to attack, but there are some shuffling here. If you'll notice, I highlighted more than just the top 5 and bottom 5. And there's a couple of thoughts to that. One, if you look up at those top 5, like they're the teams we expect: Washington, Sacramento, Chicago, Portland, and Brooklyn. I said a couple of weeks ago, right? They're going to creep in there. They finally did into the top 5. But normally when I do the top 5, the last team of those 5 has an average of about 108. That's normally the target. Well, the way the math's working this week, we've got 4 teams at 108. So I didn't highlight them all on the schedule, but they're also teams you'd expect. Minnesota's normally in that top 5. Golden State. New Orleans is, slipped up there. Like, these are the teams that we want to attack. But if I'm highlighting, 9 teams every week, then I'm saying, like, here's a whole third of who to attack. And that's not kind of the tip top if we're trying to find like a daily streamer, really weak team. But Minnesota, Golden State, like, these are still worth noting. Now, Golden State might be improving, but they're still in there, right? If we look down at the bottom, it's what we expect. Lakers have claimed the throne right now for our metric here of like the scariest team to face for fantasy. New York, Utah, Phoenix, Cleveland. And then Houston's right there at the edge. And that's a little bit of a surprise, right? Their bigs are Boogie and Christian Wood when he's not hurt. Those guys aren't like defensive stoppers. I talked about their new backcourt, like, works pretty well, but they've got a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde thing, right? Because Wall needs rest, Oladipo needs rest. You never know which team you're going to get or you're going against each night. So I think that's a little bit of fool's gold there. Also, when you see someone green for like a top pace and red for defensive efficiency, like, those two don't normally coexist. Like, Philly does it, and that drags Philly up to the middle of the pack. So I don't think Houston's going to stay here. All right, enough about that. Let's take it and apply it over to the schedule. The first big thing that stood out to me that I want to mention is when we talked about strength of schedule, out of the 5 teams that you want to attack that I highlighted, only one of them has 4 games, Portland. So the others all play 3 games. So there's just less green on the schedule of here's who we really want to get after, which means there wasn't a particular team that jumped out at me and I'm like, oh man, you want to hammer so-and-so, the Knicks or whatever, right? Miami's got a pretty rough schedule this week if we're looking at the downside. They've only got 3 games. They play the Knicks, Utah, and then Houston. Mathematically, they're towards the bottom, but I talked about that enough where I don't really believe that. There's a lot of teams with 3 games here. So that's going to dictate in your weekly lock leagues really where you're going to try and look at it. Overall, for favorable teams, probably Orlando, if you take a look at it. They get Portland, Golden State, Sacramento. They have a 4-game week and then they get Phoenix, but those are all positive matchups to start their week. So if you're in a weekly lock league, maybe Cole Anthony, something. For streaming, Orlando's not the best. They're okay, but there's a lot of streaming opportunities this week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, the back-to-backs. Let's start at the bottom of the list for the back-to-backs. If you're in a weekly locks league, Washington's only got 3 games, and they're coming into the week with a back-to-back. They play Charlotte and then Chicago. So if Russell Westbrook's going to sit on the second of the back-to-back, that means he's only going to have 2 games, and you really probably can't play Russ in your weekly lock league. Going up, San Antonio, here could be a positive. Whether you're playing week-long or, daily change, San Antonio starts the week with a back-to-back against Golden State, which should be a good matchup. I would look at Jakob Poeltl. I'll talk to him about him more tomorrow in my waiver video, but he's probably going to be one of my top pickups. He's only 36% rostered, so if you want to get the jump on someone, I'd look there. If we're talking about the other usual suspects we worry about, Philly, no back-to-back. Lakers, no back-to-back. Clippers, no back-to-back. Well, kind of. They've got Cleveland at the end of the week, and it's the start of a back-to-back rolling into next week. But you don't have to worry about any of those here. Brooklyn has a back-to-back. Detroit and Indiana there to start the week. But with the new configuration of the team, I still don't feel super confident in giving advice of this is the rhythm. This is who rests when, the way, we could have been before, because it's just a new configuration for the team. The other thing of note on here will take us into the next screen, which is a little different. Golden State and Houston start the week with back-to-backs, and they are actually the best teams this week for streaming options. So if you're in a daily change league, both Golden State and Houston have 4 games, and the streaming days are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. You might be able to get something on Monday. Tuesday's got 7 games going. Specifically, Thursday's got 4 games, and Saturday's only got 5 games. So you're going to be able to really plug in some streamers there in your daily change league. And if we take a look at it, Golden State and Houston start the week off with 3 games in 4 nights, and 2 of those games are on the low volume days where you'll be able to play someone. So that's really where you want to look and attack. It's a little unfortunate that it's Golden State because they don't normally have a ton of options, but the big one, and I'll talk about them tomorrow in the weekly video, or in the weekly waiver video, is Juan Toscano-Anderson. He's 10% rostered right now. Kevon Looney's hurt. James Wiseman's hurt. So Juan Toscano-Anderson has an important role right now, and he stepped up. Last game he had 16, 2, 1, 1, 1. The next game he had 14, 8, and 5, and he played 40 minutes. So even if this doesn't continue all week, he looks like I think it might anyway, but he starts the week off with a back-to-back against the Spurs, and he gets to play on all these streamable days. I would pick him up right now. We're definitely going to talk about him a little more tomorrow on the waiver show. For Houston, there's not as obvious of a recommendation from me. Probably Daniel House if you're looking for threes and steals. Maybe just Sean Tate. I'll get into a little more tomorrow on the waiver video, but if you've got players available here that you want to attack, maybe I bury the lead. Boogie Cousins, right? If Christian Wood's going to be out for a while, Cousins is owned, so I can't really do the 50% or less thing with him. He's rostered on 67% of leagues, but that still means there's 30% where he's out there, and there's a good chance his minutes are going to tick up because we don't know the details yet about Wood. At least I don't, as of recording, the details about Wood's injury. So I'd give him a look. The next best teams for streaming here are probably Miami and Philly, because both of those teams get to play on all 3 of the low volume days. Unfortunately, they only played 3 games, so you're not going to get to work those players in anywhere else. Miami also, I talked about them, they have fantasy stat-wise a harder week because it's got the Knicks and Utah in there, but I still think that's worth taking a look because you get the chance. So for Miami, I'd probably look at Kendrick Nunn. It's only rostered in 20%. For Philly, I don't have an obvious recommendation for someone who's widely available. Watch tomorrow's waiver show. We'll get into some other options. If you can play someone on the streamable days, that's great, but you don't want to force a round peg in a square hole just playing someone just to play someone. Maybe they'll sink your percentages. So we'll look at some other options there for it. It's worth noting here, a couple other teams, if you're trying to pick up someone to stream early in the week and late in the week, Orlando and Portland, I put the boxes around there. They've got 3 games in 4 days to end the week. So if you're not playing a games limit, you can kind of jump around there. And that just leaves me Indiana to talk about. They've got a set of 3 games in 4 days. They're in the middle. They get Brooklyn, Detroit, Atlanta. So it's matchups that you might want. So I would give maybe Justin Holiday a look or TJ McConnell. Like I said, we'll talk more about it when we do the waiver show. But this gives you a feel for the schedule in case you're trying to jump ahead. Go look at who's out there. Get some streamers locked up. Especially this week, the Super Bowl's on Sunday. Some people forget to set their rosters or forget to do their pickup. So there's a chance in your head-to-head leagues you could get an advantage and go out and win your week.